Hello everyone, Paul Elam here with another message from A Voice for Men and with another visit from Dr. Paul. And today, ladies, let's talk feelings. Well, belay that. I'll talk feelings because if you talk feelings, I won't get to talk at all. I know that sounded insensitive, and well, it was insensitive and quite intentionally so. But keep listening. There's a method to my malice and a message that you really need to hear. I don't want you to miss out on it because you're in a huff over the fact that I regard your feelings at best as obstructive and at worst a primary and overarching cause of failure in your love life, and worse yet as a source of abusive control for anyone crazy enough to get close to you. As ironic as it may sound, if you want a good love life, the first step is to get your feelings out of the way, or at least quit using them as a weapon. So let's get out of Oprah mode and just use our brains long enough to sort this thing out. It starts, like most of your problems, in childhood. That's the cute and annoyingly whiny phase of life that boys, unlike you, are forced to outgrow. You don't get all the blame for that, but if you really want a meaningful relationship, you better start taking some responsibility for correcting it. You see, babies, whether blue or pink, are pretty much alike. When a child gets hungry or dirty or tired or sick or lonely or scared, they tend to react to it by screeching until someone does something about it. It makes sense. Babies, after all, can't take care of themselves. But not too far along in life, the paths of boys and girls, emotionally speaking, fork in two very different directions. By the time both have some measure of language and cognitive skills, the reaction to all that caterwauling changes, and not so subtly. Pretty early in a boy's life, about the time he can speak in complete sentences, tolerance for remaining a baby wears thin. His wailing is met with everything from ridicule to threats. If big boys don't cry doesn't work, then I'll give you something to cry about usually does, especially after a few rounds of following through. Psychologists will tell you that this is where we harm boys, that we dissociate them from their feelings and shut down their emotional selves. They even call it emotional abuse. But in most cases, unless taken too far, it doesn't abuse boys' feelings as much as it teaches them to start mastering them. That kind of self-control is a pretty good skill that comes in handy at a lot of things, like, say, being an adult. You see, before the psychologists came along to tell us what rotten parents we were, we had a different name for the effect we had on boys, and not so catchy and marketable. We called it growing up, and it was all the rage. We knew, even without a PhD in conjecture, that not maturing was a bad thing. It resulted in all sorts of problems, like permanent childhood and self-centeredness, and women. That's because while we were insisting that boys learn real-life skills, girls got a different message. Actually, they got the same message that they'd been getting since birth, namely that squawking loud enough until you get what you want will work. And that is why that while boys your age grew into manhood, you just got older, hairier, and more irritating, and more vulnerable to being exploited. The self-help gurus have zeroed in on that one like chicken hawks and turned your feelings about your feelings into a cash cow. For a fee, they tell you to express your feelings, write them down, trust them, affirm them, discuss them in groups, put them in a journal, confront people with them, list them, learn more words for them, read about them, mouth them through a sock puppet like a neurotic ventriloquist, and get them validated as something sacred by any and all in your life. They have led you to attend the Church of Emotionalism, where your tears are holy and Kleenex are passed right along with the collection plate. Can I get an amen? But they aren't telling you anything really different from the same bullshit you've been told your whole life, and that you now tell yourself. When you have pain, or even a sense of slight annoyance, someone else is supposed to, by God, fix it, aren't they? And so you remain, born-again baby that you are, stuck in self-delusion until you get some things straight. Despite what your therapist told you or what you saw on Oprah, your feelings don't have any inherent value compared to, say, facts, logic, or a good cheeseburger. Most of the feelings you think are so important are as transient as campaign promises and worth just about as much attention. What you feel right now won't be the same thing you feel in a few hours, or if you're like a lot of women, in a few minutes. So expecting your man to stand constantly at the ready as though his purpose in life is to validate and honor every fleeting emotion you have at each and every point of their temporary existence is a non-starter. If that is what you expect, you don't need a relationship, you just need a better therapist. And the same for taking your relationship straight into turmoil because you use your feelings to undermine communications every time a logical solution undermines your agenda. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. The more reason and logic point to your being wrong, the more unreasonable and illogical you become. It is calculated and intentional. It is a tried and true plan of, if being reasonable doesn't get me what I want, I will just be increasingly unreasonable till I get it anyway. Nothing like frustrating someone into compliance. And in a really twisted, perverted way, it makes sense. Hell, you're a slave to your feelings, why shouldn't everyone else be? And for a while, in many cases, it even seems to work. But it ultimately blows up in your face because all this nonsense is just a recipe for him to eventually cook up a great big casserole dish full of fuck this crazy bitch. Are you feeling me? Ladies, the only real purpose for your feelings is to tell you there's a problem you need to fix. After that, continuing to dwell on them or childishly forcing your partner to obsess on them with you only keeps you from finding solutions. It may annoy him into fixing things for you, as surely as you were still laying in a crib. But at this point in your life, that is only to shut you up, and it leaves you less respected and less respectable every time it happens. And so when your man gives into this, he isn't meeting your emotional needs, and you certainly aren't meeting his. All you've accomplished is pressuring him into changing your emotional diaper. And if you think this is a path to a healthy relationship, think again. Jerking people around on an emotional leash is only a good thing if you're a psychopath. Hostility will always be the natural result for people who use emotions not to connect or create intimacy, but as a weapon to control and manipulate. It is hostility well deserved. Now, there has been a long-running misconception about men and women that has been around about as long as igneous rock. That is, that women are somehow more gifted in the emotional department than men. Of course, that's just more bullshit. Training half the population to be childish, emotional puppeteers in ways that ultimately sabotage their own emotional fulfillment is hardly a gift. It is more like a cruel joke. And it may seem funny with you when you're 20, but it also might seem much different at 45 when you're rapidly graying, cooking for one, and wondering why so many men get tired of listening to you in about 5 minutes. With that in mind, if you want to see evidence of real emotional acumen, consider the following list of names. Shakespeare, Keats, Hemingway, Steinbeck, Gibran, Kipling, Blake, Wordsworth, Byron, and Shelley. Or even the great contemporary songwriters, Simon, King, Christopherson, Dylan, Hyatt, Lovett, and Henley. This list is a drop in the bucket, and if we added to it till we covered every genius in world history in the realm of the human heart, we would have to address 95% of them as Mr. In fact, truth be known, most of the men in your life who you have dismissed as emotional zeros more likely belong on that list than you do. You just never knew it because you're such an emotional mess. Feminists would tell you that all this is sexism, and perhaps they're right, though as usual for the wrong reasons. It may well be sexist to the core to raise half the population, your half, to be emotional cripples while telling them they are emotional giants. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes another installment from A Voice for Men and another visit from Dr. Paul. Hope you've enjoyed, and as always, see you next time.